Hey adventurers, so today is the last video in our series, maybe the last video in our series on the 5 elements, at least our list that we currently have. So this is what makes a magic system enjoyable, at least to us.
So basically it needs to exist. We want the magic system there and existent in the fantasy world, and that's pretty much a given.
This doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be a usable magic system, so spells, powers, whatever, but there needs to be some sort of magic to the world. Whether this is magical creatures or events or actual usable magic like we mentioned earlier, it needs to be there, but it doesn't have to be in the forefront of the story, because some stories aren't always about the magic users.
Right, but it does influence the world and the culture around the story.
Yes. So the second point is that it needs to be unique to the story.
So again, this doesn't necessarily mean this has to be imperative to the story, but it does have to be imperative to the world and society that we're seeing within the story. Of course, magic systems can be based off of mythology or older tales, something that's already established or loved, and that's fine, but it needs to be twisted in a unique way to that story. So if we just had the same magic system every book, we'd get bored. And that's why, like, Percy Jackson takes Greek mythology and changes that into something different, and that works, and there's other examples of that.
And then if you look at like the Chronicles of Narnia, they also have a very similar magic system to mythology, to Greek mythology. They have creatures like nymphs and minotaurs and stuff like that, but they also then take aspects from the Bible and use those as kind of magic systems. And so that it's kind of, you can use what's been done before, but do it in a unique way that's unique to you.
Right. So also in this unique magic system, having magic systems great, and if you make that unique, that's even better. But also the consequences for this, you need to be unique to the story and to the character and the way that the way the magic system interacts with the beings.
Which we'll get to more on that in just a second.
Yeah. Point 3, the magic system needs to make sense in the world.
So some worlds make more sense to have a hard magic system, or some make more sense to have a soft magic system. So right here I'm going to define what soft magic and hard magic is. So a hard magic system is a magic system that has set rules that can't be broken. Sometimes they can be bent a little bit, but you can't do something outside the bounds of those laws that are set up. Whereas a soft magic system there really isn't much of a rule. There's not really many rules, and it's kind of just whimsy and for the heck of it. So you just kind of do it. A good example of a hard magic system would be Allomancy from the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. There's very set rules about how it works, about the consequences, about how everything interacts within that magic system. A good example of a soft magic system. Lord of the Rings is a decent...
Hard.
Well, there's some soft and some hard, but for my soft magic system example, I was going to go with Harry Potter, because you have spells, you have a wand. You don't always need the wand to do magic,
but you also do.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. There's not really any hard set rules, but there are some certain things that do a specific spell. There's some spells that can't. It's kind of just everywhere, mostly for the whimsy. Not so much.
For the whimsy?
Yeah.
It's mostly, that's not a word. That's not a word.
Yes, it works. Anyways, so it's not really defined what can and cannot be done with magic. I mean, you can teleport in Harry Potter, and you can fly, and you can do all these different things. So there's not really rules to the magic of Harry Potter, at least not in the same way. So now that we've given a bit of a definition on what the difference is between a hard and a soft magic system, when talking about a hard magic system, it is important, at least from what we have seen and understand about magic systems, it's important for hard magic systems to have consequences. There's tons of different ways that the consequences can be done. That's a hard word to say lots of times really fast. It's like in the rules, the laws of Earth. every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Therefore, with magic, every magical act has to have an equal and opposite act or react. And a good example, again, looking back to Mistborn, because it's such a clearly defined magic system and fairly easy to understand. If you're burning steel, which I won't get into all the hows and whys of how this magic system works, but if you're burning steel and you're pushing on something, you're going to get pushed away, or the thing's going to get pushed away.
It's that same kind of consequences when using pewter. If you're enhancing your strength to a certain degree, once that pewter burns off, you're going to be weakened.
You're going to be
as a result
exhausted and just tired and feel really weak because you don't have that extra anymore.
And you used up something you didn't have.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense? You can't use something you don't have. It's magic. It's magic.
All right, where are we at? So these consequences can be kind of weird and obscure, but they can also be very legitimate issues. Like we said, if you push against something, something's going to push back. Either you get thrown back or the thing gets thrown back. One of the two. It's going to happen. But whereas these more obscure or weird things could happen, I really don't want to use the example from my fantasy world, so I'm going to try and think of another one on the spot. And there's one. And part of the magic system in the Dawn of Wonder is there's this certain... it's a spoiler, I can't say that, so never mind. Do you have a good example of weird or obscure consequences?
I don't study magic systems closely enough to know.
Yeah.
And I don't have mine developed enough in that sense to know.
So we can't come up with a good example that's not spoilers, so we're going to say that...
Well, I don't know. I feel like in Harry Potter you see the type of consequences of when a spell goes bad. It's not necessarily the same reaction every time, adverse reaction every time. I think of not Neville, the other one, who always blew himself up. Seamus always blew himself up, but that wasn't the bad. That was only in the movie, so that wasn't always in the book. What I'm saying is, with a spell, the bad reaction would vary based on how he went bad with the spell, but also it's very whimsy, as you put it, in that sense, as it's not like a set, oh, she did it wrong, she's gonna turn green now.
Yeah. So, although hard magic systems almost always need consequences, it's less important, I guess, to have soft magic systems have consequences because, again, it's mostly for whimsy and for fun, and you don't really have a... you can break the rules. There's no rules to how it works, so why would there be rules for how it works?
But that's not accurate to every soft magic system.
That's not accurate to every soft magic system at all.
Harry Potter has rules.
There are some rules, yeah. But I'm just saying that it's easier to get away with not having
something explained.
Lots of rule it's easier to get away with not having consequences if you're not giving the rules for the magic system. It's almost
like the way you're putting it words at that a soft magic system is basically a lesser developed one.
No, it's not that it's lesser developed, it's just that the creator decided that they didn't want to define the boundaries of the magic system. Maybe it didn't fit for the story, maybe they were lazy, there's a bunch of reasons why it could be.
Maybe they don't like exposition in writing.
There's a bunch of reasons why it could be. But there's also a theme in lots of series that have a softer magic system of actions have consequences. Magic has consequences. I think, for example, you use a spell, and in order to use that spell, you have to take something from your body to fuel it. Not literally cut a chunk of your hand off to burn it or whatever, but you'll use the spell, and then after you get done, you'll realize, oh, my hand's burnt now. It's just kind of the way that the magic works. Exactly.
If you saw that,
part of the magic system.
They'll know.
Yep. So it's kind of I don't know where I was going before Kate confused me and broke my train of thought.
Yeah. I blipped. Sorry, guys.
Blipped my train of thought away.
Continue.
That whole idea of using a spell can cause damage to your body is why lots of times they come up with magic objects. So
Talismans.
Weapons, talismans, wands are very common, staffs are common, you know, these magic things that allow you to channel the power of the magic through the object rather than yourself,
Right.
causing the damage to go or causing the object to be damaged rather than yourself.
Yeah, and so sometimes the power within yourself activates the power in the object, but sometimes you channel actually through it.
Yes. So when it activates the power within, that's when an object is actually imbued with magic. This is going way, way deep into lore. I'm okay with it. But if you imbue an object with magic, then you can, because you imbued it, you are able to access that power within without ever having to without ever having to use the magic in you use the magic in the object, which I don't think it runs out. Who knows? There's so many different rules and ways to do it.
System.
Yeah. But then you can use the power of the object rather than yourself to do the magic. There's so much to magic systems that I don't know. There's just so much to them and so many different ways that you can decide to do them, whether soft or hard. What types of rules, if you have more than one magic system, if all of them are hard magic systems or some of them are hard, some of them are soft, you know, there's so many different ways that you can do it.
And how they affect the world is going to be different based on the magic systems and based on the world and based on the part of the world we're seeing.
Yeah. Because, like we said, sometimes you're telling a story that is not about a magician or a magic wielding character. Sometimes it's just about a normal human being, a farmer, out in their field, but there's still the magic that exists in that fantasy world.
That's actually what's going on in my fantasy world. There is magic that exists. You see it in the book, but you don't know that it's magic in the book because my system is very subtle and in the world it's unchanneled. It's not channeled by beings yet.
Yeah. So that's just some random, lots of
We digress.
thoughts and digressed and maybe went a little bit too deep into some aspects. But our main points again are that it needs to be, that it needs to exist, that it needs to be unique to the story, and that it needs to make sense in the world.
One specific thing I like to see in a magic system is the consequences we talked about. I personally don't like a lot of telling and exposition type of writing in a book, but I do like actually seeing the physical consequences or emotional, however the consequences in there. I'd like to see them manifested a lot instead of just being told, well, you know, if you do this you're gonna die. I want to actually see someone dying from that.
Yeah, rather than it being told to you, you see somebody use the magic and then die because of it.
And that's not necessarily that's more specific to storytelling, I guess, than actual magic system. But that's one thing I really like.
I guess one of the specific things that I just like seeing about magic systems is that when they're actually used and seeing a master of that magic be able to use it and they don't have to explain it, but they could. You know, they've got the knowledge and the experience that, oh yeah, I could explain exactly what I'm doing, how it works, and why it works this way. That's something that I find really interesting. At the same time, though, I do enjoy when somebody's exploring the magic system for the first time and learning how to use it. So it's kind of, I like it all.
So another thing that we always incorporate into our book reviews relating to the 5 elements is if our book isn't fantasy, we still rate based on a special aesthetic, and it's not our favorite way to word that because it's very vague, but basically it's the feeling, it has to do with the setting in the world of that specific story. Dystopians very much have a special aesthetic as opposed to a magic system.
Yeah, but all books have it, even like Little Women, which Kate just recently reread. It has its own special aesthetic. There's its own thing that makes it unique, that makes it, you can tell that this is Little Women, not something else.
It's part of the world, it's part of the setting, it's part of the writing style, it's part of It's all the parts of story incorporated into one thing that we're titling as special aesthetic that makes this story unique. So a special aesthetic is what would be featured if you were to make a picture collage of a story, of the whole story. So if you were to make a picture collage, let's just pick The Giver, of the world, of the story encapsulated in a collage. That would be the special aesthetic, a great example of the special aesthetic.
So we just wanted to include an example of a magic system that we both really enjoyed, even though we didn't love the story, which I'm getting, the more time I spend away from it, the more I want to reread it and see if my opinions change, especially since through this year we've been exploring books and analyzing books
and establishing more what we like and what we dislike and why we dislike those things.
Yeah, so I'd like to return to this book eventually, and that's The Story Peddler. The magic system of The Story Peddler is a pretty interesting, there's a couple of them, but the one that stands out most clearly to me is the main one that you see, and that is story weaving, where you tell a story and bands of colored light come out from your hand and weave together into a picture or a specific moment from the story that you're telling, something to represent the entire story. And so that was really cool in the way that it was described in the book, and the way that you had a very visual image in your head after the story was told, of how it worked and what it would look like. And that was something that was really cool to us, especially seeing that it could be used for more than just telling stories as this, you saw more of what it was capable of.
Right, but that was only one aspect of the magic system. There was also song weaving, and
I don't remember what all the other ones were.
Yeah, I'm blanking on them at the moment. I think there was 4 or 5 different options.
At least 3 that I can remember clearly.
Yeah, and it each had different effects. They all had consequences. It was just really well established, a very, very vivid magic system, something you could really picture in your mind, something that was, it felt realistic. Yeah. It was really neat.
It is kind of interesting that one of the consequences about this main story weaving, is that what it was called? I think that's what it was called. But one of the main consequences didn't actually so much have to do with the magic system itself, but rather the government's perception of the magic system and what they did in relation to that. So it was kind of cool how
didn't make sense. But when you repressed the magic,
that's not what I'm talking about. Well, I'm talking about how there's crown stories. The crown would only let you sell certain stories.
But you couldn't.
You couldn't do anything else. That was illegal.
You physically could. It was illegal.
Yes, I know.
That's like saying we can't go over 50, but yes, we can. We're just allowed to.
I know, but I liked seeing that as the consequence rather than, yes, there was consequences to the magic itself as well, because there always is, but there was also consequences outside of the magic system.
That makes sense. That just wasn't clear.
Okay. Alright. I think that's all explained now. Well, after extensive exposition on our parts, we finally got to the end of this outline that we wrote for ourselves and the end of this series. We hope you enjoyed this video and the series as a whole. If you did, please comment down below what you liked. Give us also maybe some ideas about how you view magic systems and maybe this whole 5-element series. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Are there things that you think maybe you agree on some part but don't agree completely on another? Let us know, because we're willing to change our opinions on these. We don't know everything there is to know about any of these topics. This is just kind of our observations as we've been reading and as we've grown up with stories. So, well, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you guys next time. Stay well.